In this video, we are going to be talking about Simplified Chinese versus Traditional Chinese. I'll be talking about the facts and my own personal opinion about this. First of all, let's take a look at where they are used. Simplified Chinese is used on mainland China, Malaysia, and Singapore mainly. Meanwhile, Traditional Chinese is used on Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Macau. Next is about the character structure, which we all know is very different. Simplified Chinese and Traditional Chinese have different character structure. Simplified Chinese, like its name suggests, is simpler than Traditional Chinese in terms of character structure and have fewer strokes. The difference is noticeable when you read a text written in Simplified and Traditional Chinese. So these are some examples. 工厂, 广场, 忧郁, 爱, 龙, 夜, 凤, 国, 请, 来. So how many characters are simplified? This is a complete list of simplified characters which is published in 1986 in China. In the content, they stated that they have 3 charts. The first one contains 350 characters specifically simplified and cannot be used as radicals. The second chart, 152 simplified and can be used as radicals. And the third one, 1753 characters simplification derived from chart 2. So there are at least more than 2000 different characters between simplified and traditional Chinese. What about the number of characters? Simplified Chinese has less Hanzi compared to traditional Chinese. During the development, due to the simplification, some characters were merged together. For example, Tofa, 发白. Wait, even the way it's read, it's different in traditional and simplified. In traditional Chinese, I read it as Tofa, 发白, and in simplified, it's Tofa, 发白, Tofa. It's kind of weird. In simplified Chinese, the fa and fa is the same, even though they're completely different meaning. Another example is mian. In traditional Chinese, this is the character, and in simplified, this is the character. It means noodle. However, in traditional, this mian is face, and in simplified, this mian is also face. So sometimes you can't really differentiate unless you read the context. There are also cases where there are 2 versions of the same character. For example, this gan, which means dry. However, when used in qiankun, it stays the same. So this is previously the gan in simplified, and this is still in simplified. Qiankun is used in Ba Gua, meaning sky and land, yin and yang. The next one, vocabulary and sentence structure. This one is just slightly different between simplified and traditional Chinese, so it doesn't really matter that much. For example, 视频. In simplified, it means video, but in traditional Chinese, 视频 means video channel. And in traditional Chinese, if you want to say video, you should use 影片. Another example is 土豆, which means potatoes in simplified Chinese. But in traditional Chinese, 土豆 means peanuts. Potato is 马铃薯 in traditional Chinese. Also, another one that we usually use, which is taxi. In traditional Chinese, we use 计程车, while in simplified, we use 出租车. As for the text flow, the way you write it, for simplified it's like English or the way we write it normally from left to right. And for traditional, it's vertical. Hold on. It's flipped in my screen. It's this, like this, this. So it's vertical up, down, right to left. So those are the facts between Simplified Chinese versus traditional Chinese. So now head on to my own personal opinion. Which one should you learn? Now obviously it depends on what you need, right? Or what your goal is. If you're aiming to go to a university in China or be able to do business with Chinese people, then go for Simplified Chinese. If you are more interested in learning the history of China, for example, or history of anything related to Chinese culture, in my opinion, it's better to learn the traditional Chinese. Simplified Chinese is developed in 20th century, so there is less history around it. Or even when you learn more about the Chinese language and culture itself, there are more written in traditional Chinese. If you are just learning Chinese language without any goal, I still suggest learning traditional Chinese. Why? You might realize that I'm leaning towards traditional Chinese, but this is just my biased opinion. Both are good in their own ways. There's actually an anecdote between Simplified and traditional Chinese, which can be seen as offensive. So I'm sorry, but I'm not the one who made this. I'm just gonna share it with you guys. This is the complete sentence. 汉字简化后，亲不见，爱无心，产不生，场空空，面无脉，运无车，道无道，而无手，非单义，有云无语。开关无门，乡里无郎。可瞧的是，魔仍是魔，鬼还是鬼，偷还是偷，骗还是骗，贪还是贪，赌还是赌，黑还是黑，赌还是赌，贼仍是贼。So what does that mean? Close but no sea, love without heart, pregnant but no birth, factory all empty, noodles without wheat, transport without car, guidance without moral, children without head. What the? Flying with a single wing, there are cloud but no rain, open and close without door, no young person in village. Strangely, demon is still demon, ghost is still ghost, stealing is still stealing, lying is still lying, greed is still greed, poison is still poison, black is still black, gambling is still gambling, theft is still theft. So of course the mainlanders are not satisfied with this and they launch a counterattack. 汉字简化后，党内无黑，团中有财，果含宝玉，哀因有存，美还是美，善还是善，虽丑无鬼。只不过台无极，关无缘. It's shorter and also a little less offensive in my opinion, so the mainlanders are the winners here probably. It means no black in political party, there's talent in a group, country contains jade, friendship stays because of love, beauty is still beauty, kindness is still kindness, no ghost in ugliness, but Tai has no luck, and one has no words, which means Taiwan has no luck and no words to counter this. Wow. So again, in my opinion, I like traditional Chinese more because it looks better in terms of the characters compared to Simplified Chinese. They look more elegant because they actually contains the character combination of what it actually means, which I mentioned in the previous video about Hanzi's origins. Traditional Chinese are also easier to remember, even contrary to how it is more complex in terms of strokes. I do agree some characters in traditional Chinese have too many strokes, but most of the simplified characters lost its meaning during the development and makes it harder to relate it to anything. So memorization is about connecting to what we are familiar with, and Simplified Chinese does not do that. In the earlier example, we have mian. Those are totally unrelated. And then we have, for example, this shi and shi. They have the same right side And that is how a character that contains this character is spelled. However, in Simplified Chinese, it changed. The right side is 寸 here, and this one is still 四, but the radical is not 言 anymore. 诗 means poem, so having the right radical makes more sense for me. Also, another examples, chang. These characters are too simplified for me, like 工厂, 广, 产, 言, 气, 非. It's harder to differentiate in comparison to traditional Chinese. It could be because I learned traditional Chinese first, but in Simplified Chinese, because of the simplification, there could be similar characters with little difference, and sometimes even the same characters but totally different meaning. So for me, it makes it harder to read. Similar case to the 诗 and 时 earlier, it adds some extra complication. For example, yang and yang over here, they have the same right side, but then in Simplified it changed. They're not the same anymore. But hey, it solved the literacy rate in China back then. In 1949, the literacy rate was lower than 20%. In 1978, it goes up to 70%, and in 2010, it's already about 96%. So Simplified Chinese is not without its merits. So what do you think? Which one are you planning to learn? Do comment your answer and reason down below. If you like this video, please subscribe and give a like. Thank you for watching. See you next time.